It's a chilly September day as Noah Oppenheim dives backward off the side of a boat. The water is a balmy 57 degrees, relatively warm for Oppenheim, who dives year-round. He has a GoPro camera attached to his arm and begins a 30-foot descent to the bottom. Oppenheim and the other divers are searching for derelict fishing equipment, or ghost gear, on the seafloor just around the perimeter of the granite breakwater protecting the Rockland Harbor. Scientists estimate that there are millions of abandoned fishing traps littering the bottom of the Gulf of Maine. When the divers find a derelict trap, they tug a few times on a rope connected to the dive flag at the surface. A weighted line is tossed into the water, which the divers attach to an abandoned trap that'll be hauled up later. The plastic-coated wire traps are torn loose from their buoy lines in storms, or accidentally cut off by propellers in high-traffic areas, and collect at the bottom of Maine's many coves and harbors.
Guys, I think right in here is going to be a gold mine. There's one every 10 feet, it looks like, on the sonar.
Buzz Scott runs the nonprofit OceansWide, which has been training scuba divers to recover ghost gear from the seafloor. They've primarily been diving in Boothbay Harbor, and they're in Rockland now for the first time.
I think we could probably work this area for 2 weeks and still leave some, yeah.
Scott guesses there are maybe a few hundred traps around the breakwater alone, and potentially more than 15 million abandoned pots in Maine waters. His estimate assumes that the roughly 5,000 Mainers with lobster fishing licenses may lose as many as 80 traps a year. The wire pots wrapped with polyvinyl plastic replaced wooden, biodegradable traps in the 1980s, and they've been piling up since. To assist in the cleanup, OceansWide has trained more than 300 people how to scuba dive over the last decade. Scott says many are high school students who are interested in cleaning up or exploring the ocean. He says others, though, are drawn in by his own story. Scott grew up fishing on Matinicus, but found new opportunities through research diving in the Arctic and elsewhere.
So I've been able to do a lot of stuff in the last 50 years, and that's what I hope for these guys. Yeah, clean up the ocean here and go off and make the world a better place.
Emily Drapeau learned to dive with OceansWide about 8 years ago. She's working on her master dive certification now and helps to process the traps for recycling once they're hauled to shore. About 20% of the traps recovered by OceansWide are still in usable shape. Drapeau says it can be frustrating sometimes to have to leave so many more traps on the ocean floor at the end of a day.
And just to know that there are more being made, that's a little discouraging. But it all makes it worth it when we have worthwhile exchanges with lobstermen who are interested in what we're doing and who are looking for ways to help us.
In just about 20 minutes or so, the divers have found and tagged 5 traps. Once the divers are out of the water, the group begins to haul them up to the surface. They're caked with mud and tangled with seaweed. Drapeau opens the trap doors and makes note of the species inside. There are a few lobsters, some mussels, a rock crab, and a Jonah crab. Noah Oppenheim searches the traps for remaining tags that might identify the original owner. This one, he says, was set in 2009, according to the tag.
You can contact that individual, talk about where that gear might have been set in relation to where it was retrieved, and then we can understand how gear moves over the course of a decade plus. And that'll allow us to find more gear and to prioritize hotspots where it's aggregating in order to make our retrieval efforts more efficient.
Some reusable traps are returned to their owners. Others are recycled. So far, OceansWide divers have recovered about 13,000 traps near Boothbay, Matinicus, and Gouldsboro. A federal marine debris grant will allow them to eventually expand to Stonington, Jonesport, and Vinyl Haven.